A few weeks ago, a company called Serotone got in touch to ask whether I'd like to review its new hearing aids. They're called Core 1, and they're billed as the world's smallest over-the-counter hearing aids. What's more, they cost a fraction of what you'd normally have to spend on prescription hearing aids. Now, the last time I reviewed a cheap over-the-counter hearing aid, it was utterly useless. The question is, can Serotone do any better? First, a bit of background. About 4 or 5 years ago, I finally gave in to my wife's demands to get my hearing tested. She'd had enough of me constantly telling her to stop mumbling. The hearing test showed I'd lost my high-frequency hearing. I needed hearing aids which would be free on the National Health Service. But the very idea of walking around with a pair of bricks behind my ears filled me with dread. So I looked to see if there was a more discreet alternative. And yes, there was, at a price. I remember finding one pair that needed to be inserted in your ears once every 3 months by a team of specially trained hearing aid inserters and at a cost of £14,000. That's every quarter. Now, I'm as vain as the next man, but free versus 50 grand a year. And the thing is, even a regular pair of private hearing aids is going to set you back somewhere around £2,500. So I stuck with the free NHS ones. Here they are, and look how attractive they are. They worked well for a few years, but then a few weeks ago I noticed my hearing had got worse. And things came to a bit of a head when I went to lunch at my brother's house, where my sister-in-law's niece was telling me about her new boyfriend. "What does he do?" I asked her. "He's a sex therapist," came the reply. "Gosh," I said, "that was a clever choice of boyfriend. How did he become a sex therapist?" "No, he's not a sex therapist. He's a saxophonist." Serendipitously, Serotone got in touch a few days later and offered to send me these new Core 1 hearing aids to try, which they said are for mild to moderate hearing loss. Now, at this point, I thought it would be only fair if I had my hearing tested again before doing this review. I mean, it would be a bit unfair if I'd become as deaf as a cuttlefish, which, in case you're wondering, is very deaf indeed, and certainly beyond the range these things are supposed to compensate for. So I took myself down to Boots the Chemist, where they shoved me in a box and played noises at me, which I then tried to guess. And here are the results. And as you can see, over on the left-hand side, we've got the low frequencies, where I've got really pretty mild hearing loss. And then on the right-hand side are the high frequencies, where I've got moderate hearing loss. So it looks like I'm a reasonable candidate for the Core 1 hearing aids. Still, given my previous experience with over-the-counter hearing aids, I don't really hold out much hope that these are going to be as effective as a prescription hearing aid. So I also bought a pair of £2,500 Phonak Lumity hearing aids. And here they are. I've been wearing these for a few days now, and they're great. In fact, I might review these next. Meantime, let's see how the Core 1s compare. I'm going to kick myself if these things are as good as the Phonaks. That's going to be a very expensive mistake. Now, first things first, these things are tiny. Look at them. They're like a couple of little miniature mice. Look, they're absolutely weeny. And on that front, they beat the Phonak Lumities hands down. So that pops in your ear, whereas all that clobber hangs around the back. But let's see what these things look like when I pop them in my ears. Wow, fantastic! Pretty much invisible. I think you'd struggle to tell I was wearing a hearing aid unless you were nibbling my earlobes. These things are a lot more discreet than the ridiculous Olive Pro hearing aids, or indeed the Flare Ear HD mini ear trumpets that I tried a while back, for that matter. But already I'm starting to notice a bit of a problem here. These are closed dome hearing aids. I better explain. The bit of the hearing aid that you stuff in your ear is called the earbud or dome, and there are three varieties. Open, which lets sound in from around you and boosts the frequencies you've lost. Then there are closed domes, which don't let much natural sound in, but because of something called the occlusion effect, amplify everything. Then finally, there are vented domes, which are somewhere between the two. The problem with closed domes is that the hearing aid then amplifies all noise across the frequency spectrum. And if, like me, you've only lost the high-end frequencies, then the low frequencies created when you speak or chew are going to sound distractingly loud. Suddenly, your own voice becomes so loud in your head that you go from not being able to hear to not wanting to speak. And whilst I expect that my friends would see that as a rather major product benefit, I'm rather less enthusiastic. What's more, if you have that problem, you're also going to need to switch your diet to pureed foods, or at least avoid crisps, or celery, for that matter. It's absolutely deafening. Now, unfortunately, I think this is going to limit Core 1's use for me, although I assume they'll be okay for anyone with low-frequency hearing loss as well. And I gather that Serotonin is working on an open dome design too, so maybe the next model will work for me. Meantime, let's charge these things up and see how well they amplify sound. And for that, I'm going to pop them into the supplied battery charger that came with them. Well, these things are fully charged now, so let's take them for a spin. I'm going to pop the left ear in first. There's a bit of a knack to it, but once you get the hang of it, it's easy enough. And then the right. Oh my God. Gosh, I wonder if you can hear the very obvious design flaw here. The feedback is deafening. To demonstrate this, I'm going to hold another microphone to my ear and hopefully you'll be able to hear what I mean. These things are about 10 times worse than I remember my granny's hearing aids, and hers used to whistle away like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Now, I should say that I did actually try these things before making this film with the same result. My wife could hear me coming back from the village shop. Or rather, she could hear my hearing aids coming back from the village shop anyway. Now, feedback is caused by the hearing aid microphone picking up the noise made by the hearing aid itself. So I did wonder if perhaps I had the wrong size dome or I hadn't inserted it far enough into my ear. But I tried all the different sizes of dome and I tried pushing the hearing aid far enough into my ear that I thought for 1 second it might pop out the other side. The only thing that makes any difference is to turn the volume right down, which I'm going to do now. But that rather defeats the purpose, because then you're left with nothing but a very expensive pair of earplugs. And actually, come on, even with the volume at the lowest setting, the whistling's still there. Now, I did have another grumble about the Core 1s, which is that there's no way to know what level you've got the volume set at, other than at the highest and lowest settings, which are signified by beeps. But I suppose that's slightly beside the point, because anything above 0 is unusable. Now, when Serotonin first contacted me, I said I'd be interested to see how the Core 1s compared with my free National Health Service ones, at which point they asked me to remember that many countries in the world don't have a national health system, so even if these things are not quite as good as the ones offered by the British National Health System, they could still be hugely beneficial for a great many people who don't have $2,500 to blow on hearing aids. But I'm sorry, I just don't buy that. I mean, is there any reason to assume that the peasant farmers of Burundi are going to be happy toiling in the fields with the sound of 1,000 screaming cats in their ears? I really did want to like this product. I really did. Hearing aids are expensive and ugly, and it would be great if someone were to invent a low-cost, invisible and effective hearing aid. But sadly, this isn't it. I should also say that this is a pre-production model, so maybe they'll be able to iron out the problems before they start up the factory lines. But let's just say I'm not betting my house on it. So my search for a cheap, effective, invisible hearing aid continues. If you can recommend any, do comment below. And until the next time, I've been Arlo Guthrie. Bye-bye.